Check, check. Looking
Check,
good.
check.
Oh, cool. All right. I had a great lesson today with a lawyer. He's a little older than me, so I think he's like 60-something. He has been gigging several times a week his entire life.
Oh, you've mentioned...
Yeah, I mean, he's a lifetime musician.
Mm-hmm.
He has solo gigs. He just plays, in bars and wineries and stuff. But he came to take lessons because he had been starting to lose some top end of his range and just his voice didn't seem as healthy as it had been. And we've had a few lessons over the course of the last few months. And today, and his goal when he came to take lessons was to regain access to his G above middle C. And today, he hit a B above middle C. He hit the B almost at high C.
Which, if you don't know, that doesn't sound like that much distance, but once you start getting to that part of the range, especially most male voices, the difference between a G and a B, that is like 100% higher. Like that is like so much higher.
Especially when you haven't been using your head voice your entire life.
Yeah.
So he was just like he would just like make this sound and he'd be like, "Is that me? Is this my voice? Like who's doing this? I never thought this was even possible." And man, that is what makes what we do worth it. I mean, there's a lot that makes it. It's a great job, but man, that just made my day. To see the light in his eyes, and he's like, "I can do this. I can do more than I thought I could." So proud of him.
I can't squeak a B.
Maybe you could if you stuck with
Maybe
lessons.
I could if I stuck with lessons.
The problem is you don't want to take lessons from me.
This podcast is sponsored by Performance High Voice and Music Studio.
And we don't know our second sponsor yet, do we?
Our second sponsor, I don't know if you know, I talked to them about this. We are also sponsored tonight by the Chipotle next to Nisi's.
That specific
in
Chipotle.
Lafayette. We really appreciate their support.
Of selling us burritos.
Yeah. We love that Chipotle so much.
So why did we eat at Chipotle tonight?
Well, so we had a Christmas gig with Cody Qualls, his second one of the season. And man, pre-sales were like $180, which for a solo artist, like that is...
He knocks it out of the park
every time. So obviously it got over 200, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But Nisi's is the premier / main venue in the northwest quadrant of the Denver Metro until you get up to all the way to Boulder, really. Mm-hmm. And we play there quite a bit, and we have made a bit of a tradition out of going to that Chipotle.
In that same shopping
before
center.
the show, it's in the same shopping center.
Because, man, that chicken... Was it chicken...
Al Pastor.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah,
it's so good.
They are knocking it out of the park over there at the Chipotle.
Cody's knocking it out of the park, and Chipotle is knocking it out of the park.
So thanks, Chipotle.
And I'm knocking it out of the park.
You're doing great too. I don't know what's wrong with you.
You're hanging on for dear life. I'm
hanging on for dear life.
You've had a busy week because you are leaving tomorrow to go see your mom, which is why we are recording this on, what is this, Thursday night?
Thursday night
after the gig.
Yeah.
Going to be released next week. Next Wednesday. We're switching to Wednesday. I don't know if you saw my announcement on the notes of the last show, but we're switching our releases to Wednesdays at 5 p.m. You are leaving, and we're not going to have time to do a podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to be gone for a week, and going to be in Florida. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be pretty cold in Florida, too. This crazy weather. So when we left the gig tonight, the car thermometer said -18.
Yeah, that is insane.
That is really insane.
Never seen that here.
No, we were saying there was 10 years ago or so, there was 2 weeks in December, January, where it was like single digits every day for... Mm-hmm. But it's like -18 is a lot colder than...
I honestly wasn't cold at all because I dressed for it. I figured it was going to be the coldest thing I'd ever experienced. So I wore this sweater, and then I wore a fleece, like a Patagonia over that, and then I wore my heavy winter jacket that goes down to my knees over that, and a heavy scarf, and a hat, and gloves, and I'm wearing a skirt, but I'm wearing these flannel lined tights.
Yeah.
I was fine.
It's weird if you dress for it. I mean, if you had to be out for hours in it, that would be a very different thing. But like, you know, dressing for it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a lot to do this week because you are having a short week, and it's the end of the year, and people are doing all their projects. But
finalizing some things.
Yeah, you did some pre-production with Ipecac that I walked in on. You guys doing?
Yeah, that was great. That was great that you got some of that.
Yeah, we had a little discussion that evening about how accidents are sometimes the best pre-production.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the fun things about doing. So,
what is pre-production?
You know, when you record a song and make it the way it's going to be, that's producing. Pre-production is when you get together and you work on the song ahead of time and start to try to find arrangement things and part things and, hey, you know, you do this here and you do that there. And back in the old days, which I was a part of,
back when everything was in black and white?
Yeah, everything was black and white.
Must have been amazing when everything went to color in life.
Yeah, I mean, I am just glad we don't have to send telegrams anymore. That's the big difference to me. I also don't miss Calvin Coolidge. Anyway.
Are you 97?
Yeah, sometimes it feels like it. Anyway.
Pre-production.
Pre-production. Well, you know, even though we had, you know, digital tape and then going into computers, we didn't have nearly the, you know, computing power and you know, for years, the max tracks, even on the computer, was 24 tracks. So you had to really know what you were getting into when you were going to do stuff. So the norm was that anytime you were going to work with a band, I would work with them oftentimes for a week, maybe a night a week for 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it is. And we would get in the rehearsal space and just live band, you know, the band playing and me kind of helping find things and
so it could be this instrument drop out here. It could be you all do a series of notes right here. It could be a different drum fill here. It could be a quick little break of everybody.
It could be, you know, double the intro, double the outro. You know, we came up with so many cool things with Ipecac. It was really weird. Like we've worked together a couple times now, and so they really understand the process. So it becomes this kind of like live brainstorming session. And when you've got a band that can really, like, you know, and these are young dudes, but like they can,
and ladies.
Well,
everyone's a dude too.
Everyone's a dude. All musicians are dudes. But anyway, they're so good at, you know, taking an idea and just trying it. And it's fun with a live band to be like, hey, what if we try, instead of doing that one thing, like, instead of doing it once, why don't you do it 3 times? You know, or why don't we do it 4? No, 3 turns out 3. But anyway, getting back to what you were saying, right when you walked in, there was a thing where, the first chorus of a song, we realized that, and sometimes you just have to play around with a song for an hour or two, and then you start realizing things about the song as you're playing in the room. Like, the chorus was, the words were slightly different, but basically every chorus was a double chorus, where it ended with the same lyric, and the melody was the same, and a few words were slightly different, but basically it was a repeated chorus. So we're like, hey, why don't we do the first chorus? Like, don't do it double, do it one time. And the bass player got a little confused, and just like, he was like, I don't know what's happening, so he stopped. And then it made it so the guitar and drums were on their own for the first time through. Like, when it came out of the chorus, going back into the verse riff, it was just guitar and drums for a minute, and then he was like, oh, I got it, and like came in, and I was like,
that is it.
I was like, that is so cool. And if you do that as like an on purpose thing, and when you come back in, you're like, brown, you're like, I totally did that on purpose. And it became this super cool thing where it's like, you know, comes out of the chorus, and then it's guitar and drums, and then bass and drums, and there's this spot where there's a pause.
Since we kind of had a break, I'm going to go turn off the furnace.
Oh.
I just turned off
Oh.
I just turned it off.
Well, I mean, it's probably running some sort of cycle. Welcome to the first episode of Furnace Talk with Justin and Adrienne. It's a new podcast we're launching, Furnace Talk. We don't know anything about furnaces.
How do we even get back to where we were? My
point is, very often these things that are mistakes become the coolest part of songs, and it's especially true when you're working with a live band in a room, and if you just seize on like, oh, I know you didn't mean to do that, but that's awesome, and there's something awesome in how not innovative, but like how organic that is, that just like, but it's not only true in working with live bands in a room, it's true in computer editing. Like lots of the coolest things you hear on records, and occasionally, I can't think of one off the top of my head, you'll hear something like, I bet they totally cut and pasted that wrong. And it was like, oh, that's not right at all. But like, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Or the famous example, I mean, there's tons, but the famous Led Zeppelin records. Right. Very often on Led Zeppelin records, there are odd arrangement things where, for example, the song Black Dog by Led Zeppelin, brown, wow, wow, wow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it has the B part, and the first time in the song it goes 3 times, and the second time it goes 4 times, and the third time it goes 3 times again. And the reason it is different every time is because that was a tape editing error. We've talked on the podcast about how you used to have to measure, and they just measured wrong, and instead of the riff going 3 times, they measured wrong, and it went 4 times that one time, and they were like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. So, yeah, often mistakes are the most organic, coolest part of, and in some ways, that's a great way to look at doing music, maybe, is like leaning into your mistakes and going like, how can I turn this into a really cool thing instead of turning this into a like, flipping out over, I did something wrong. So I would say, talking about the show we did tonight, I think the best part of it to me was you and Cody doing the prayer again.
Yeah.
That was, which is not a song I'm super familiar with, but it's Celine Dion and
Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah. And boy, you
got a good response.
Standing ovation, or close to it.
Yeah.
Half the room.
Yeah, and we were kind of playing around. We ran it before the show in sound check, and we started kind of like, you just dripped beer on yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still.
Anyway, and we were kind of playing around, like, I was trying to do the proper technique and everything, and then I started doing like the fake classical sound, which is like this woo kind of sound, like overdoing it, playing with it. And he's like, I actually kind of like that. Because he was doing it too. So that's why I sang it differently. Did you notice that
I noticed it, that it maybe I wasn't paying that close of attention in sound check, but it sounded different during the show than... Yeah. Wildly different, but a little...
Yeah, well, it was a lot heavier production on my part, and I did end up pulling chest a tiny bit, but I don't think anyone would notice or care unless you were an actual classical singer. But yeah, it did feel like I could really... It was my wheelhouse. It was a little more in my wheelhouse. A thicker vocal cord, a little higher pressure.
Right.
A bigger, like, heavier voice, which I didn't get caught in my chest voice or anything. It's just like... That's the way my voice works best.
Yeah. Well, people loved it, and you, I don't think, had that much of a problem, and Cody didn't really have any problems, but like it being so cold and so dry. Yeah,
we both asked the waiters for hot mugs of steaming water so we could steam our faces.
Yeah,
because I could tell when I was warming up in the car, my voice just didn't want to get completely there.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm sure it's not me. I'm not feeling sick. It's that it's 1 degree outside. Actually, I think it was negative.
Oh, it was probably negative by the time. Yeah. I mean, if it was negative 18 when we left, it was probably,
crazy. But yeah, takeaways. The show was great. Everybody loves Cody. He's a great showman.
Amazing, really.
And you were talking about how Brian...
oh my gosh, Brian!
He is such a huge part of the show.
I feel like we talk about him all the time, but he's such a
He's the entire orchestra in the prayer.
He nails. I mean, in the prayer, like does like it sounds like an entire orchestra with all this bass stuff, and he's playing, and he like programs these things so that like he's playing piano, but under that it's like triggering string sounds. Mm-hmm. So he's got strings and the whole thing, and then you were gonna say
at the beginning of.
The Christmas song.
The Christmas song, which has
chestnuts roasting.
Yeah, there's an intro before the part that everybody knows that goes, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. But the beginning of it has like a couple of piano notes like doo-doo, and then it switches to strings, then it goes doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
And does this, yeah.
And it's just this really iconic sound from, one of the old-timey Christmas songs.
Yeah.
He hit like 2 or 3 notes, and someone in the audience, we both heard it, was like, yeah, I love this song.
Yeah.
It's like, the intro isn't even close to the rest of the song.
It's not even related to the...
But he hit the tone so perfectly that people knew it sounded like the record.
He programmed the tone in the keyboard that he plays. He just nailed the exact tone of the sound from the recording.
Which sounds like an old 45.
Which sounds like an old 40s or 50s recording. Very mid-rangey, very
thin and like
scratchy in a way, but rich. I don't know. It's such a weird sound that those old records have. But he nailed it so perfectly that like, he made like 3 little string notes, and people are like, I know exactly what song that is. Like, it's so amazing. He nails all of those tones, and we were talking about like he just is like 50% of the show. It's just like.
I know. Couldn't do without him.
I mean, even on the prayer, we were talking, the plan was for me to play bass on the second half of it to kind of like fill it out. And then I was like, Brian's got it. I don't, I'm not adding very much coming in on bass.
Yeah.
He's taking care of it.
There's something I want to talk about. I was thinking about this on the ride home, which is why I was more quiet than usual.
I don't know than usual, but yeah, go ahead.
So I mentioned on our podcast last week that Performance High has gotten access to 2 more rooms at Sound Structure. So now we have access to 6 rooms. We lease 3 and we sublease 3.
Okay, right.
So we are growing a lot. It's not that we're using 6 rooms at a time all days. We have one room, we only have Wednesdays, for example, but we're really growing quickly. And, we've opened a Parker location recently. And I don't often talk publicly or even with a lot of friends about some of my bigger ambitions, because I like to kind of turn them over and like feel them out and go slow and like think about the pros and the cons. Sure. I know that some people like to like be the hustle and like put the big audacious, big hairy audacious goal, BHAG, that's a thing. That's a thing in business. Make yourself a big, hairy, audacious goal that scares you, and then, even if you fall short, you'll, reach for the stars, fall, whatever.
Yeah.
Reach for the moon, land among the stars. And I'm not really that way. I like to kind of be private with stuff and think about it, because I don't, if I decide I don't want to, then I don't want to backtrack.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm breaking my pattern a little bit here. To the 100 or so people who listen to this podcast, I am starting to think about launching Performance High into many more markets in Colorado. And I'm thinking about I'm turning over whether to do that like kind of all at once or one by one. Mm-hmm. And if so, like in what style? What would it be, actually looking for a commercial space? Probably not, because that's expensive and I don't know what the market is, but I'm thinking about how this would work, and it's kind of coming together in my brain. It's like kind of looking through a fog, and you swim through it, and you're like, oh, I see a castle over there. Oh, I see a castle. Oh, I'm starting to see the landscape. Yeah. That's how it comes to me. And so I think it might be in 2023, we search for the rest of the great team that is going to be our teachers in other locations up and down the Front Range. And then they start training in our training program fall of 2023. Then they start having their first trial students in early 2024, and they become full-fledged teachers near the end of 2024. Like, we're in our second run of this right now.
Right.
And I'm thinking that we might just do it the same way as in Parker, find a partner who already has a music-based facility.
Sure.
Like, why sign up for some 5-year lease and build out $50,000 of
it makes
space?
yeah.
You know, like let's prove it. And when I think about it that way, there's nothing holding us back. Like,
No.
there's no risk.
No.
Really. I'm kind of coming to terms with that, like thinking like, oh, this the road is open in front of me.
And there are rocket spaces and sound structures, meaning rehearsal studio facilities.
Rehearsal studios, there are libraries, there are churches, there are schools, there's space.
Yeah.
There's space that people would love to rent out.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm thinking about that. And then along with that, like as I kind of go through that process, I try to think, well, if I met with a business coach, what would a business coach ask me? So I journaled, why do you want to do this? What happens if you do it? What are you afraid of if you do it? What's the best that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? What are the synergies? So I'm just like, I did like self-coaching. But along those lines, I want to give, speaking of business coaching, I did coach myself on this one, but I also have a business coach that I'd like to mention because she has a group training coming out in January, which I can't attend because we're going to be in New Zealand, but I considered it. Anyway, her name is Casey Newman, Neumann, and she runs, she's a business coach, and her website is wearerulerless.com. Like we don't have rulers, we are rulerless.com. And the thing I love about her is she's almost like an anti-business coach. You know, I've heard about plenty of business coaches. They're all about like, you know, most of them are very expensive and you have to sign up and pay them thousands of dollars a month and they'll help you make lots of money.
Yeah.
She is she's just like, well, what's your definition of success and happiness? Where do you want to go? And she just like, she doesn't make me feel like I am not hustling enough. I'm not, you know, the question is always just like, well, what do you want? Let's help you get that.
Yeah.
And if what you want isn't a $10 million company, that is perfectly fine.
Yeah, well, it should be.
Yeah, I know it should be. But but business coaches profit off of richer clients.
Well, that's very true.
Anyway, so I just wanted to give a shout out to Casey because if you have a business, you're an entrepreneur, or she really only works with kind of semi-established people, not like brand new business owners. She has a great program starting in January that's open for registration right now. So check out wearerulerless.com. We'll put that link in the show notes. So,
and if Elwood was here, he would make the joke about using tape measures instead of rulers. What would be the Elwood joke about being rulerless?
We are rulerless. Well, rulers. Why would you want rulers? They're stiff. They're only one length. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. We are unaware of distances under 1 foot.
Or maybe it's not that. I mean, that sort of ruler. Maybe it's like we are not ruled by anyone.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Didn't occur to me.
I know that wasn't entertaining or anything.
No, it's a good plug,
but,
and yeah, that's great.
I know I didn't consult with her through this particular thought process, but I'm thinking about consulting with her again.
Well, and isn't that so often? Yeah, right. Like if you learn the thought process from a good coach or a good mentor or a good teacher,
it can help. But then also sometimes you just need to meet with somebody and get another set of eyes and ears on something. I mean, I met with her when I decided to stop creating new content for Nail Every Note. So I was it was a subscription product. People were paying per month.
Right.
And so I was generating new content every week. And it got heavier and heavier on me. But I was making some money every month. I was like, well, what do I do? Like, I'm going to give up a certain amount of money that's not negligible if I stop doing this because I can't very well ask for people to pay for something monthly if I'm not giving them something new or creating an active community or anything. And so she asked the questions that led me to my answer, which is it's time to let that go. And the amount of energy that freed up was shocking.
Yeah, I mean, but that's sort of that same thing of like you don't have to be trying to make anything or everything that you're doing into the biggest version of it that it can be.
Yeah.
it's fine to want to do music and not have your goal be, I want to tour stadiums.
Yeah.
You know, that is equally as valid. Like, just because you want to do something doesn't mean you have to do the $10 million company version of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you can do, you know, the size of it. I mean, I say that a lot with artist development coaching. And that's one thing I work on with people a lot. It's like really figure out what you really want.
It's hard to answer that question.
It is.
You know, I tried to do that when we were in the main years of Adrienne, the band. So it was 2012, 13, 14, 15. And near the beginning, I was trying to set these goals and thinking, what do I really want to do with my original music? And I was visualizing Red Rocks, and I would go there and sit on the stage and look up and imagine, like, someday I can play here. I never convinced myself, I'll tell you that much.
Right.
So it's hard to draw the line between, I don't have enough faith in myself, I need to have more faith, it can really happen, and I don't really deeply, deeply want this to happen. Like, I don't have it in me to make that happen. I don't, it's not like the only thing I want out of life.
What sacrifices...
That's it, the sacrifices.
...are you willing to make?
Dude, we've talked about this before. Like, you have only, I think both of us believe, it may be wrong, but both of us believe you have one good, give it 200% effort in your life. And so,
I think sometimes, yeah.
I mean...
Yeah,
maybe other people are different.
I sometimes, right.
Okay, so mine was water skiing.
Right.
So I graduated from college. I had started the Stanford water ski team. I competed in college. I moved to Florida. I took my Stanford computer science-ish degree, and I moved to Florida to work for free for a pro water skier and live in her attic above the pro shop, which was not a legal residence. Right. Anyway, and then, I mean, I competed. I trained in the morning, midday, and evening. I skied 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. I also lifted, did plyometrics, ran, stretched. So I had 25 workouts a week or something. And I went to tournaments on the weekend, and all my money and all my time. And I did mental training, sports psychology, visualization, meditation. I was 100% dedicated. Besides my full-time job that I used to pay for all this, water skiing was my full-time life.
Yeah.
And so I got pretty good. I mean, nothing to make anything of now, but and you took your band to get signed by a major label, and that was your 100% in every waking moment sort of thing.
Just every waking moment, and lost relationships over it, and I mean, that was just even. Before I even got close to actually signing, I was even in a different band, and I remember one specific breakup was over, we had some big plans or whatever, and then there was a last minute, hey, you can open for this national band, and I was like, yeah, we got to do that. And the breakup was, I'm always going to do that. Dude, you know what I mean?
I had the same conversation with a guy I married, whereas if I had to choose between you and water skiing, it would be water skiing.
I'm just, right now, now, I'm always going to, I don't care that it's your grandmother's birthday. We got a chance to, do... I mean, that's terrible in a way, but you do sometimes, there aren't many things in your life, maybe only one, where you're willing to get to that point of
you will give up anything.
I'll just give up anything. Mm-hmm. And then later with other things, it's you can still take it very seriously and really want to win and really be great, but go, I'm not willing to throw away my personal relationships over it. I'll try super hard. I'll miss sleep. I'll whatever.
Yeah.
Some people get lucky and it just works out, and other people, the way they get to, Red Rocks or stadium, whatever, is that they sustain that level of I'm just going to give up everything else to anything that can advance this pursuit. But that kind of goes back to where we started talking about. That doesn't need to be your approach to things. It's not, and it's a weird thing that I feel it's this weird idea floating around in the world that hey, if you aren't going to try to become the biggest rock band in America and tour stadiums, like, why even work on music? Like, if your goal isn't to be the absolute biggest and best, like, why even do it? And it's like, that's so dumb.
Do you hear that? Do you feel like that's around?
I do, and I feel like that's in a lot of people that I work with. That's in a lot of people's heads.
Oh, okay.
I think that's something that uncles say to people, you know? You know what I mean? And, like, it seems to infect people with this. Like, if I'm not... And that absolutely doesn't make sense. You can have a great career for yourself that maybe isn't being like Taylor Swift level famous, but you still make a nice living and you have a nice family life and you know, whatever. And like, it doesn't have to be like, it's either Taylor Swift or bust, or like, why even like play the guitar and sing if you're not going to try to be Taylor Swift? It's like, that's such a dumb thing. Why wear your seatbelt if you're not going to like, race NASCAR? You know, it's like, it doesn't even like, well, you know, there's a lot of benefits to wearing a seatbelt that don't have anything to do with being a professional NASCAR driver. Anyway, and I'm really serious about this furnace talk idea. I think we could really do a really entertaining furnace-based podcast.
This might be a complete non sequitur because we don't know what of that is going to get edited out earlier on, so we will see. I'm no longer doing the editing.
Alyssa, however, leave some of the furnace talk stuff in.
However, it's still a woman editing. You notice that? You talked about how women are the best editors. Oh,
that is literally true. Yeah. So most, like if you look at the 100 greatest films of all time, most of them, 80 or 90 of them, are directed by men, and almost all of them, even more than 80 or 90, are edited by women. Like most Hollywood movies are edited by women. Because I guess you guys are good at editing.
We're good at getting things done.
That was so condescending. You guys. I'm so sorry.
You gals.
You people.
You chicks.
Yeah.
You dudes, because they're all dudes.
Yeah, they're all dudes. Yeah. I guess dames are good at editing.
You dames.
I guess broads know their way around.
Let's cut this one.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.